Welcome to the first episode of our documentary series on the Mughal Empire, one of history's most fascinating and transformative civilizations. Over the next 5 episodes, we'll trace the complete arc of this magnificent dynasty, from its dramatic founding to its ultimate decline and fall. We'll explore the visionary rulers who built it, the magnificent monuments that defined it, and the complex social and political dynamics that sustained it for over 3 centuries. Today, we're beginning at the beginning, exploring how a young warrior from Central Asia, facing seemingly insurmountable odds, transformed himself into the founder of an empire that would reshape the entire Indian subcontinent and create a civilization whose cultural legacy remains immortal even today. The story of the Mughal Empire begins not in India, but in the rugged, snow-capped mountains and vast steppes of Central Asia, thousands of miles from the subcontinent that would become the center of his power. In 1483, a boy was born in Fergana, a mountainous region in present-day Uzbekistan that was known for producing fierce warriors and ambitious princes. His name was Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad, but history would come to know him by the nickname Babur, which means tiger in the Mongol language, a fitting epithet for a man whose courage and martial prowess would define his entire life. This child, born into a world of constant conflict and political instability, facing poverty, exile, and repeated military defeats, would eventually create an empire that would rule over nearly the entire Indian subcontinent, an empire that would last for more than 3 centuries and produce some of the world's most magnificent monuments, artworks, and intellectual achievements. His is truly a story of human perseverance and military genius overcoming the most daunting obstacles. Babur's early life was marked by struggle, hardship, and displacement that would have broken many men, but which instead forged his character and taught him the lessons he would need to build an empire. Born the son of Umar Sheikh Mirza, the ruler of Fergana, young Babur inherited a kingdom that was barely distinguishable from the chaos and lawlessness surrounding it. The steppes and mountains of Central Asia were home to numerous competing kingdoms, tribal confederations, and ambitious warlords, each vying desperately for dominance over the lucrative Silk Road trade routes that flowed through the region. Fergana itself was a small kingdom, constantly threatened by more powerful neighbors and by internal instability. Babur lost his father when he was only 11 years old, an event that was supposed to make him king, but which instead plunged him into years of struggle and uncertainty. Inheritance of a kingdom in this environment was more curse than blessing, as it made him a target for more powerful neighbors who saw his youth and the weakness of his kingdom as an opportunity for conquest. With neighboring rulers constantly threatening his meager kingdom, and with ambitious generals and nobles plotting against him from within his own realm, Babur spent his adolescence fighting for survival rather than enjoying the fruits of power or receiving a proper education. He was defeated militarily, imprisoned multiple times, betrayed by supposed allies, and forced into exile. He wandered from kingdom to kingdom, seeking shelter and opportunity, always plotting his return, always gathering supporters and learning the lessons of warfare and statecraft that would serve him so well in his later years. These experiences of hardship and constant danger were invaluable, though he could not have known it at the time. Each defeat taught him something about tactics or strategy, Each betrayal taught him about human nature and the complexities of political loyalty. Each moment of exile taught him about resilience and the ability to maintain hope and determination in the face of seemingly hopeless circumstances.
By his early 20s, having survived years of conflict and displacement, Babur had begun to establish himself as a formidable military figure in Central Asia. His reputation grew not just from his military victories, though these were impressive, but from his personal courage in battle, his ability to inspire fierce loyalty in his soldiers, his tactical brilliance, and his willingness to share hardship with his troops. He was known as a commander who would ride alongside his men in battle, who would share their food and their dangers, and who would reward loyalty with promotion and treasure. These qualities made him beloved by his soldiers, and loyalty was the most valuable currency in the fractious politics of Central Asia. In his 20s, Babur captured the great city of Samarkand, the cultural and commercial jewel of Central Asia, a city renowned for its libraries, its poets, its scholars, and its magnificent architecture. Capturing this city was a tremendous achievement, and for a brief moment it seemed that Babur's fortunes had changed dramatically. He was the master of one of the greatest cities in Asia. But his triumph was short-lived. Larger and more powerful neighboring kingdoms perceived Samarkand as a threat and as an opportunity to increase their own power. Rival forces closed in from all directions. Despite his courage and his tactical skill, Babur found himself unable to hold the city against the combined forces arrayed against him. He was forced to retreat from Samarkand, leaving behind the prizes of victory. This pattern would repeat itself multiple times during his early career. He would capture cities, celebrate momentarily, begin to think that he had finally established a secure kingdom, and then be forced to retreat as overwhelming forces defeated him, or as internal dissent threatened his rule. These repeated defeats might have destroyed a weaker character, but they instead taught Babur invaluable lessons. He learned that military strength alone was not enough to hold territory. You needed to understand the local population. You needed to distribute resources effectively. You needed to create a sense of common purpose among diverse populations. He learned about logistics, about how to feed and maintain armies on the move, about how to repair and improve his military technology. Each defeat added to his knowledge and his experience. By the time Babur was approaching middle age, he had spent 3 decades learning warfare at the most intense level imaginable. He had been forced to become not just a brave warrior, but a sophisticated military strategist and a capable administrator. Around 1504, when Babur was approximately 21 years old, he captured the city of Kabul, which lies at a crucial crossroads between Central Asia and India. This city would become the foundation of his power and the springboard for his greatest ambitions. Unlike Samarkand and other cities he had captured before, Babur was able to hold Kabul. He established it as his base of operations, gathered loyal supporters around him, built up his military forces, and began to consolidate power in the surrounding regions. For the next 2 decades, Babur ruled Kabul and the surrounding territories, constantly strengthening his position, constantly improving his armies, constantly dreaming of greater achievements. During these years in Kabul, Babur began to look eastward with increasing interest and ambition. Across the mountains and through the Hindu Kush, beyond the Indus River, lay the vast plains and rich kingdoms of India. The Delhi Sultanate, which ruled much of northern India at this time, was fragmenting under the weight of internal contradictions and competing powers. Its authority was weakening, divided among competing noble families and subordinate rulers who were increasingly acting independently. The various sultanates and kingdoms of India possessed wealth beyond anything Babur had seen in Central Asia. Their treasuries were full of gold, silver, and jewels. Their populations were numerous and could generate enormous tax revenues. To Babur's ambitious eyes, this represented not just an opportunity, but a calling, a destiny that was awaiting him. The wealthy kingdoms of India lay virtually undefended against a strong, unified force led by a brilliant commander. In his letters and in his autobiography, the Baburnama, Babur increasingly expressed his belief that he had been chosen by destiny to conquer India and to establish an empire there. In 1519, after years of preparation and planning, Babur undertook his first major incursion into the Punjab region of India. This was not yet an invasion with the intention of permanent conquest and the establishment of an empire. Rather, it was a raid designed to plunder wealth, test the strength of Indian resistance, and explore the opportunities that conquest might offer. He successfully captured and plundered the city of Lahore and other cities in the Punjab region, demonstrating that Indian armies were not as formidable as they had seemed from a distance, and that his Central Asian military tactics could indeed be effective against Indian forces. The raid was extremely profitable, adding significant wealth to his treasury and raising his prestige among his followers. However, he retreated back to Kabul after this raid, not yet ready for a full-scale conquest and the commitment of resources that would be required to hold such distant territory. For the next few years, Babur systematically conquered and brought under his control the kingdoms and territories that lay between Kabul and India. He extended his control southward and eastward, conquering Kandahar and other strategic locations. By 1525, when he was approaching 40 years old, Babur felt that he had finally prepared himself adequately. He had a powerful army, tested and loyal. He had accumulated significant wealth. He had experienced commanders and trusted lieutenants. He had learned everything that could be learned about warfare and administration. Most importantly, he had the conviction that destiny called him to greater things. He decided that the time had come for his great gamble, the invasion of India, that would either make him one of history's greatest figures or would destroy him in the attempt. The obstacle to Babur's ambitions was the Delhi Sultanate, ruled by a warrior named Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim Lodi was a capable commander in his own right, a man of considerable military experience and ability. He had consolidated much of the Delhi Sultanate's power and had created what seemed on the surface to be a formidable state. However, Ibrahim Lodi's rule was not universally popular. He had made enemies among the Afghan nobility, among the regional rulers, and among various factions at court. Some of these discontented nobles actually sent messages to Babur, encouraging him to invade, promising that they would not resist him or would even actively support him. Whether these promises would actually materialize was, of course, uncertain, but they gave Babur some encouragement for his plans. In 1526, Babur crossed the Indus River at the head of his army and marched toward Delhi. The moment of truth came on April 21, 1526, at a place called Panipat, located not far from Delhi, on the road between Kabul and the great cities of the Gangetic Plain. This battlefield would become one of the most historically significant locations in all of Asia, for it was here that the fate of India would be decided and the Mughal Empire would be founded. At Panipat, Ibrahim Lodi assembled an enormous army to confront Babur. Contemporary accounts and historical records suggest that Lodi commanded somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 soldiers, depending on which source one consults, compared to Babur's force of approximately 12,000 men. On paper,
Based purely on numbers, Lodi should have overwhelmed Babur. The disparity in numbers was so great that many observers expected Babur to be defeated and killed. His entire army could be destroyed, and the outcome would still have seemed inevitable given the vast difference in numbers. But superior numbers alone do not win battles, and this truth would be dramatically demonstrated at Panipat. Babur was not just a brave warrior, he was a military genius who had studied warfare his entire life, who had fought in countless battles, and who had learned from every defeat and every victory. He understood military strategy and tactics at a level that most commanders could never achieve. He arranged his artillery and matchlock gunners in a tactical formation that had been developed through centuries of Central Asian and Persian warfare, but which was new to the Indian subcontinent. He positioned his forces in a way that created a devastating crossfire, allowing his gunners to inflict maximum casualties on Lodi's advancing infantry and cavalry. He used cavalry charges at precisely the right moments to break enemy formations. Most importantly, he used what would become a hallmark of Mughal military doctrine, the seamless combination of mounted archers, artillerymen with their cannons and muskets, and organized infantry working together in perfect coordination and synchronization. The Battle of Panipat unfolded as a complete and devastating victory for Babur. Ibrahim Lodi was killed in the battle, struck down while fighting at the front of his army. His army was routed and pursued by Babur's cavalry. Thousands of Lodi's soldiers were killed. The survivors fled in disarray. Within a single day, the power structure of northern India had been completely transformed. Babur, the tiger from the steppes of Central Asia, had defeated one of the greatest sultanates of India through a combination of superior tactics, superior technology, and superior leadership. With this single victory, Babur captured the great cities of Delhi and Agra, the two greatest seats of imperial power in northern India. He had established himself as a force that could not be ignored.
In 1527, at the Battle of Kanwa, Babur defeated a confederation of Rajput kings who had united against him, finally establishing his authority beyond question in the minds of most observers. This victory, coming less than a year after Panipat, seemed to confirm that Babur's triumph was no accident, that he possessed genuine military superiority. Over the following years, Babur systematically consolidated his control, establishing military garrisons in major cities, appointing loyal administrators, beginning to organize a governmental structure that would allow him to rule his new empire. By 1530, when Babur died at the age of 47, he had been transformed from a dispossessed prince struggling for survival in the mountains of Central Asia into an emperor who ruled an enormous empire stretching from Afghanistan to Bengal and from the Himalayas to the Deccan. His empire was still fragile in many respects, still contested in various regions, but it had been established with unquestionable military force and was beginning to develop the administrative structures necessary for long-term stability. In our second episode, we will explore how Humayun lost and then miraculously regained this empire, setting the stage for the greatest Mughal ruler of them all, Akbar the Great, whose reign would transform the Mughal state from a military conquest into a unified civilization.
If you enjoyed the story of Babur and the rise of the Mughal Empire, subscribe to Forgotten Thrones and stay tuned to uncover more untold tales of the mighty Mughal rulers.